In this video, we are going to talk about malware. What is malware? Malware is a software or firmware that is intended to perform an authorized process that will have an adverse impact on a system. There are different types of malware that we're going to talk about here today, but before we start, please keep in mind that many malware types lack clear distinctions and can fit multiple categories. The first type of malware that we're going to talk about is virus. This is the most classic form of malware. A virus, in its most classic form, has been defined as not a standalone program, but a set of instructions that are inserted into other programs. It essentially uses the host program to spread and execute its malicious code. The way this works is that the virus code is inserted at the end of the program, at the end of the program's instructions, and an early instruction is replaced with a jump command. So essentially the program is skipped its normal instructions and it jumps to the virus code at the end. Once the virus code runs, it will jump back and the program will run normally. The early viruses primarily targeted the DOS operating systems and copied themselves into as many programs as possible. DOS systems lacked clear distinctions between privileged and unprivileged operations. Therefore, this allowed the malware to easily gain full control of the system. But despite this, they did little to no damage. For example, one of them was that it would play German music every 7 minutes. In 1995, the first macro virus called Concept virus emerged. Macro refers to scripts that are inserted into Office documents, particularly Excel spreadsheets. When a user opened the infected document, the macro executed automatically and corrupted other Office files as well. And once a user emailed an infected document, the virus would spread to the new host. In the late 1990s to early 2000s, viruses grew in number and complexity. But the classic viruses have become less and less common nowadays, and despite this, the term virus is still used to refer to all types of malware. The next type of malware that we're going to talk about today are worms. A worm is a type of malware that replicates itself and spreads across networks. This is different from virus in that worms do not need to attach to files, but they are self-contained and can actively spread. The Morris worm was one of the first major computer worms to spread across the internet. Its primary goal was not to cause damage, but rather to replicate and spread itself across connected computers. It spread once the worm infected a computer, it would try to spread to other machines that were connected to that same network. That means that it would often infect the system multiple times, which would slow down the machine and network due to too many processes running. Because of its rapid spread, it also clogged the internet and made it very difficult for people to access the net. The I Love You worm spread in the year 2000. This worm would spread through email with an attachment, and when the user clicked on that attachment, the worm would run and would scan Outlook for contacts and automatically send itself to everybody. It was a mass mailer worm, meaning that it would spread very rapidly to millions of users, and it crashed email servers worldwide, of course. And if users opened the attachment, the worm would also delete important files on their computers. The My Doom worm was similar to the I Love You worm. It spread in the year 2004. It spread through also email, and when it was clicked, it would spread through multiple methods, even harvested email addresses from web documents and local files. It was designed to avoid technical users as well, and it would specifically target people that were less experienced with technology. And the My Doom spread very quickly, and the worm caused major delays in the internet traffic. And it also created a botnet, which we will talk about. The next type of malware that we're going to talk about are Trojan horses. A Trojan horse is a type of malware that disguises itself as a legitimate program, but it's once executed, it performs malicious actions on the system. It also uses psychological manipulation in order to look legitimate. It often lures users by posing as appealing files or programs such as pornographic content, video games, or illegally downloaded music and videos. The modern examples include seemingly legitimate apps that you may find on iOS or Android stores. Um, the security risks are it can cause significant damage, especially if it is granted administrative privileges. If it runs as an administrator, they can bypass security measures and hide from security software, which that would make it very hard to detect and remove them. Operating systems like Windows have mechanisms to limit the damage that Trojan horses can cause. For example, they often prevent programs downloaded from the internet from modifying sensitive system files. The next kind of malware that we will talk about are rootkit. A rootkit is different from viruses or Trojans because it doesn't describe how the malware spread. Instead, it refers how and where the malware is installed on the user's system. A rootkit is a type of malware that targets gaining root or administrator access to a system, which makes it extremely dangerous. One example of this is the Sony BMG rootkit. In the year 2005, Sony introduced the extended copy protection system on their CDs to prevent illegally copying and distributing their music. And the way it worked was that when a user inserted one of their CDs into their Windows machine, a agreement would appear which had to be accepted to play the music, but it didn't disclose the software's full impact on their system. It would modify their operating system and it would include a phone home feature to send user data to Sony servers. There was no uninstaller or on the CD, and manual removal was very complex and sometimes would make the system unable to play CDs in the first place. There was a lot of public backlash, of course, and after many lawsuits and public outrage, Sony finally recalled the affected CDs and paid settlement fees and released an uninstaller. Capcom did something similar with their Street Fighter V. They included a rootkit with the release of their video game to prevent cheating in the game. It would do that by bypassing certain operating system level protections. It would disable certain privilege protections and would give the game unprivileged access to system resources. While it was less invasive than the Sony rootkit, it still had the potential to create security risks because it would make the system vulnerable to other types of malware that could essentially piggyback on it. The next type of malware that we'll talk about are ransomware. Ransomware are a type of malware that locks data or system resources and demands payment for its release. Unlike earlier forms of malware that were classified by how they spread, ransomware is classified by their function. The first reported case was the AIDS. In 1989, the AIDS ransomware was distributed via disks that were handed at a World Health Organization AIDS conference. Once they were inserted into a computer, they would display a message claiming that the computer had AIDS, and files were locked, and the user were instructed to send money to unlock them. Thankfully, the malware was poorly designed, and it was easy to decrypt. The modern ransomware have gained momentum after the rise of the Bitcoin. The key elements behind modern ransomware include a form of payment that is untraceable and irreversible, which makes Bitcoin a very attractive option. The next type of malware that we'll talk about are botnets. A botnet is a network of compromised computers that are controlled by a malicious attacker. a computer that has been turned into a robot for the attacker is also called a zombie. A botnet could be created in various ways, but typically through malware like worms or other methods. A botnet is controlled remotely by cyber criminals. The infected devices called bots report to a central command server for instructions, and once infected, they also try to infect other devices and convert them into new bots. The purpose of botnets is that a large amount of data is sent from many computers to the botnet to overwhelm a single target, such as a web server or a game server. The massive influx of data causes the server to become overwhelmed, and the result is that the server can't handle normal traffic, and it leads to service interruptions. And the Mirai botnet exploited the rise of the IoT devices that were connecting to the internet in 2010s. Many of these devices were insecure and had default passwords that had not been changed. The botnet, once established, turned those devices into bots, and their first targets were Minecraft servers. Some owners paid botnet controllers to launch these attacks on their competitors. The goal was to drive players away from them and possibly boost their subscriber numbers. So the people behind the Mirai botnet didn't need to carry out the attacks. Instead, they sold services to other malicious actors. This means that the attackers do not have to own a botnet. They simply pay the botnet controllers to launch an attack on specific targets. This is often referred to as DDoS as a service. So these are the type of malwares that we covered here today. Thanks for listening and have a good day.